The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
Here we are, man. The My Backstory podcast with Jeddy Azuma. Did I say that right? Are we good?
You got it, man. Yeah,
Cool.
man. Honored to be here. Let's do it.
Yeah, for sure, bro. This has been like a long time coming. I know we had touched base like a couple months back, maybe even a year ago.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like we just like I don't know, we were kind of just in different wavelengths. Wherever you were going one direction, I was going another. And we're kind of like finally we were able to meet back up and do this episode. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to have you share your story with the audience. And yeah, man, so I'm gonna let you take it away and share your backstory.
Oh man, where to begin? I was actually on another podcast earlier today, and someone said, "So where did it all begin?" And I was like, "Oh man, how much time you got?" But the way I've always told my story is that I feel like I had a pretty typical upbringing. At least I did for a long time. You know, I grew up 7 miles outside of downtown Manhattan in the suburbs in a small New Jersey town. Both my parents still together to this day, 35 years of marriage. They live in the same house that I grew up in. And I used to think that was typical, man. But that's like the Cinderella story now.
For sure.
People stay together. So that's one dimension of the story, is just having that upbringing. But, I played sports. I invested my time in academics. I did really well in both of those things. Yep. A big part of my upbringing was the fact that I pushed for excellence. And my parents, they're the way that they transmitted that message of excellence to me, I interpreted as I got to do things perfectly. Right. And so, really from a young age, man, I remember when I was 10 years old and I really got into baseball and soccer, I would be outside for hours and hours and hours just doing drills because I wanted to be the best. Yep. And it definitely had it left an impression on me from a young age, and it still follows me to this day. I'm 33 years old, and that's something I still compete with.
Yeah.
But
were your parents weren't pushing you? It was just kind of like an internal motivator, or what?
It was subtle. It was subtle. You know how it is with kids. I mean, you said you got 4 children. You know that you could say one thing to them and they interpret it and blow it up to be something completely different. So right. I remember my mom, there's like a distinct memory I have where I brought home a report card. I probably was like 9 years old, maybe 4th, 5th grade. And I brought home a report card and I had all A's and a B, like 1 B. And when I showed it to her, she said, "Oh, wow, what happened with that B?" It was like the first thing she said. And, imagine a kid, how do you interpret that? That means I failed. I didn't do good enough. And I'm sure it was innocent on her side. Like I said, she just wanted the best for me. But I internalized that and I made it really mean something.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I think we're all guilty of that as like parents, you know what I mean? Because like you see, like I know with my 13-year-old, I know he's capable of so much, and sometimes I feel like he's not meeting his own like potential. It's like you see his grades, it's like a C's or B's here and there. I'm like, but I know you're capable of A's, but you kind of like have to find that balance of where you're not where you let them know that you believe in them and you're proud of them, but at the same time, like hopefully they live to their highest potential, but it's a fine line to walk, because you can send a wrong message. Like with you, it's like, I worked so hard and I had 1 B, and it's like, damn, not good enough, With my 13-year-old, it's kind of weird because it's a fine balance as a dad and as a parent. You're trying to have your kids live to like their highest potential, but at the same time, not make them feel less than or feel like some sense of shame based on not like meeting your expectation as a father, as a parent. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to find that balance with my son where it's like, I want him to want it. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not trying you to like, I don't need to live vicariously through you. And because I didn't get excellent grades and you should, it's not that type of thing. It's more like, if you're capable of doing it, you might as well do it. You know what I mean? But if you don't have that capability, it is what it is,
And that's got to be the hardest thing, man. I mean, my son is only 5 years old right now, so I already see myself doing that with him to a degree. And I got to remind myself, like, come on, man, he's 5. Like, he's 5. He's got time. And I could just imagine what it was like for my parents watching me go through my knucklehead years. And just,
you're an only child?
No, I have an older brother and a younger brother. So I was right in the middle. And both of my brothers got into a lot of trouble. Like I was saying before, I was like the golden child. I got good grades. I was good in sports. I never even had detention my whole life. I never had detention. And so you know, it's more of an expression of me always just trying to get things right.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny that this whole theme that you have here with the podcast called The Backstory, one of the first huge impactful events in my life was my mom was diagnosed with cancer and we almost lost her when I was 9.
Oh, wow.
And that just like shook up my whole world. You know, at that point I was like, how do you even face off with the possibility of losing a parent at a young age?
Yep.
And then it started this weird cycle of various ailments, physical health issues that I had. I had bronchitis and pneumonia twice each over the next 2 years. And then I had a back injury when I was 12 years old where, you know, remember when they started the Rolly backpacks? You remember when that whole craze started? So just before that, I was carrying half my body weight in textbooks up and down the hill from school every day. Yeah. The only reason we found this out is because after I hurt my back, my mom actually weighed my backpack and it was more than half my body weight because I was a tiny guy. Yeah. And so I ruptured 3 discs in my back when I was 12, which is not something that should happen to a 12-year-old. And I was out of school for a year. I was homeschooled. I missed out on all that socialization. This is when all my friends are starting to date the older girls and all that stuff. And I completely missed out on that. And the only thing that kept me sane at that point in time was focusing on like my physicality and getting my physicality back. Right. I remember there was one day where I was in my room and this is one of the times I had pneumonia was during this back injury. So not only was I stuck in home, I was really, really, really sick. I had to go to the hospital. I remember I came home and I was like, I just think I can't do it anymore. I was crying. My mom was trying to console me. And my dad comes in the room and he's like, you got 2 options. You can stay in that bed for the rest of your life, or you can get up tomorrow and do something about it. And, you know, I kind of wish I could say it was like that movie moment where I jumped up out of bed like Tiny Tim and started dancing around. Yeah. But I cried the whole rest of the night. But something landed because the next morning I was like, you know what? He's right. Nobody's been able to help me with my back. No doctors, no therapists. Nobody could figure it out. So I had to figure it out for myself. And that was when I started exercising. And I put all of my energy into that because I didn't have anything else at the time.
Yep. It's a trip, man. That's kind of the message I've wanted to send to my sons, you know, not to tell them the message, but show them the message, you know, with like, I've had 6 back surgeries and it's like, everything's a choice in life, man, everything. Mm-hmm. And, you know, yeah, I've been diagnosed with all kinds of shit, you know, with my back, you know, from mental health stuff or whatever, all these diagnoses and labels, but I've never bought into them. I've never agreed or like, you know, accepted that identity or that label. So although, you know, textbook Western medicine, I may be labeled disabled, but I don't see myself as that, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was telling my wife this the other day that I think part of why I'm still able to get after it, where it's like people in my condition, like that have had as many surgeries as I had, most of the people that I've seen that are like that are really hurting. You know what I mean? Like they're on all kinds of pills. They're jacked up. They're not able to move this, that, the other thing. And I just refuse to see myself as that person. And I think that's part, like maybe half of the problem with a lot of people is how they see themselves. And for me, I've always seen myself as athletic and like a savage warrior. Like I'm just going to go out there and like get after it. I'm not going to stop. Yeah. And, you know, and like you said, what's the alternative? You know, like your dad said, you know, what's the alternative? It's like, well, I can just lay around and be all hopped up on medication, or I can just move my body until I can't anymore. You know? Yeah. That's it.
Well, and that's exactly it, man. I'm a huge believer in looking to nature as a reference point, you know, and there's this amazing Instagram account called Nature is Metal. Do you follow that one? Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right. So they showed this one of the posts they had this picture of this lion. I think it was a lion, maybe it was a tiger, but it was some big cat, and it had like a scar down its like eye, almost like the dude from Lion King, and an eye was ripped out. It had one eye. Yeah. This huge jungle cat living with one eye out there. And they told a little bit of the backstory because obviously, you know, the people who live out there and track these animals, they know this one. And he's like the alpha in his pride. I remember they were saying like they were just talking about the will to survive. Yeah. Now out there, it's the same thing as it is here. There's 2 options. Either you fight to live or you surrender to your circumstances and essentially die. It's not always death, but for a lot of people, you know, you just breathing is not really existing. And it's just that reminder to me that it's not easy for anyone anywhere. I don't care what your circumstances are. I don't care where you come from, what kind of physical challenges, mental challenges, emotional challenges. We've all experienced some sort of abuse, some sort of trauma in our lives. So wishing that your circumstances were different doesn't do anything for you. It just perpetuates that, well, let me lay down and die mentality.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, when you think about a backstory, I was like, well, which part of my backstory do I talk about? Because there was when I almost lost my mom. Even farther back, I lost my grandfather, who was my whole world when I was 5. Yeah. Then there was my back injury. Then there was when I was 16, I learned that expressing my emotions wasn't safe. And so I started compressing all that in. And I don't think there's one bullet point or one constellation point that we point to. We just, when you live a life like you and I do, we just keep encountering bigger obstacles and bigger hurdles along the way. It's like chapters of a book, right?
For sure. For sure. What brought you to California? Like, I mean, I saw that you were in California, so you left. When did you leave New Jersey, and why?
Well, when I ultimately left New Jersey, I had just finished graduate school a couple of years back. I have a doctorate in physical therapy, and I was working in New York City. I was 23 years old, and I was making good money. I had an apartment, having a good time, and it was a point in my life where I knew I wanted to do more with my gifts and my abilities, but I had no idea how to do that. I was completely lost in that sense. And I didn't have any mentors around me. I always had a good relationship with my dad, but this was the period of my life where I didn't really want to hear what my dad had to say. I needed to figure it out for myself, Right. So for about 2 years, I did this cycle of just smoking a bunch of weed, smoking cigarettes, going out and partying, making enough money to pay rent and live my lifestyle, but I wasn't doing anything else constructive with my time. At least it didn't seem like it. So I don't know what it was, but some combination of factors just gave me this impulse that I needed to get out of there. Yeah. It completely defied logic. Like I said, I had a good job. I had a great community of friends. My whole family is from the East Coast. And I was like, I got to get out of here, man. I don't know why, but I got to go. I need to find some men I can surround myself with who can help me understand what being a man is actually all about. And I got to find a place where I want to raise a family, because I definitely don't want to do it in New York City. So that's why I ultimately left. And when I left with a backpack and a one-way ticket. And I said, let's just see how far my savings will carry me. Because I got no other choice,
No, that's like a rite of passage all in and of itself, because you're going out there, you're just trusting the process of like, man, like, I don't know what I'm going to run into. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's all or nothing, man. One-way ticket, like it takes a lot of balls, man, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
What did you find when you got here? Did you see a huge difference between New York and California?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I actually appreciate the spirit of the East Coast, that people will tell you exactly what they think. And there's that energy of, there's like that blue collar, be respectful and do your job mentality that actually has served me really well out here on the West Coast. What I appreciated about coming to California was just how open people were, how willing to talk about their experience that people were. Part of it was the communities I found myself in, but everywhere I went, I just kept meeting people who wanted to go deep right away. And I was like, oh, wow, this is refreshing, because people actually want to hear what's going on beneath the surface for me, and they're willing to share what's going on for them. And that level of safety just took us down 7 layers deep right off the bat. Right. So that was probably the most refreshing thing. And also the weather, that definitely hooked me in.
How did you find your initial circle? Because the reason I'm asking is because when I got into men's work, I had been surrounded by like a lot of military folks and a lot of like very type A alpha males for sure. And I was identified with that, like very like rough around the edges, if you will. Like respect is, earned, it's not given type of mentality. And I always had this yearning, to like be like authentic with people, because I knew like a lot of the time I was wearing a mask. I was putting a mask on of what I wanted the world to see, or like whoever I was around. It was like I'm going to be like overly aggressive just to keep people away. I don't want people to get like in my space. I don't want them to know what I have going on internally, so I'm going to push them away as much as possible. And for me, like, it was almost like I had to hit rock bottom for me to find like that core group of dudes. When I finally realized, like, dude, like none of these guys that I like grew up with, or none of these guys that I've been around, they don't really know the real Josh Boyer. They don't really know like the real me at all. You know what I mean? Like, I've been putting on a front, and like I've been unwilling to be authentic and vulnerable. So how did you find your circle? What was that moment for you? I mean, you came out to California, and then who'd you link up with, and how'd that work?
Yeah, well, I'll actually jump back in time a little bit, because the very first time I had that experience that you're talking about of actually lowering the veil was when I was 21 years old. And the funny thing is, me and my friends, we had no idea what we were doing. It was senior year of college, and we started this almost like philosophers community of just getting together, sitting in a circle and talking about our experience. Yeah. It was a very grassroots council type of thing that we created. And from that, because this was mixed medium, right? We had all, men, women, students, teachers, people in the community. And we did that for several months. And then one night we were sitting around my friend's dining room table eating pizza, 6 of us. And one of my friends says, "So what's really going on with you guys?" And we were like looking around like, "What are you talking about, man? Like, we're just sitting here having pizza, life is good, etc." And he was like, "No, I mean, like, what's really going on? The stuff that we don't talk about." He's like, "I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I realized that we don't talk about the real stuff." And it was a very ripshod kind of way of diving into that topic, but each of us shared a little bit more than we'd ever had before. So that was the first moment that happened. And for the next few years, we had these loose circles. We didn't really know what we were doing. We had no guidance. It was all intuitive.
Right.
So when I came to California, fast forward to that one-way ticket trip, I landed out here with a buddy of mine that I had met at Burning Man, who I was camping with at Burning Man for a few years when I'd been out there. And he said, "Hey, while you're traveling, if you want to come stop by, then come visit me in Ventura, California." I was like, "Okay, sure." And so when I went to visit him, he introduced me to these men's circles. He introduced me to leadership work. He introduced me to a bunch of other personal development things I never had. And at this point, I was soaking it all up, like day in and day out. I was like, "Tell me more, show me more, because this is what I was looking for. This is what I came out here for." So I fell into it in a sense. It's kind of serendipitous, but he invited me into this men's circle. And it's a funny story, because when I started sitting with these guys, they were all old enough to be my dad. They were all twice my age. They'd all had kids of their own. Most of them had been married and divorced. And here I am sitting there, and I'm watching these guys do stuff I'd never seen men do before. 1 minute they're grilling each other, saying "fuck you," bullshit, and then 5 minutes later they're like hugging each other, crying. I was like, "What the hell's going on here?" I feel like I'm in a psych ward,
right.
But and they make jokes about me to this day, because they're like, the first year I didn't say anything. I sat in that circle and I was just soaking it up, because it was so different to me. But I kept coming back, because I was like, "Wow, there's something here. I don't know what it is yet, but there's something about it." And then I sat with those guys every 2 weeks for 8 years.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Now, I got to tell you, man, it's been one of the greatest joys of my life was finding like men's work. I think, it started with me. I don't know. Do you know Shems Hartwell? He's on.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So Shems, my wife and I went to, we were going to like couples therapy or whatever. And Shems, it was funny. Like, we went to high school with this girl, and she was going to Shems for like therapy with her man. And then she's like, "Oh, you guys should see Shems," and he was going from Hawaii to Santa Monica to do like in-person like therapy sessions. So my wife and I started seeing him, and it was great, man. I was like, "Wow, I've never met like a spiritual type of like teacher." He's very intuitive and like just a masterful teacher. Uh-huh. And one day it had gone like years without like talking to him, because I got busy with work and just whatever. And he reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, I'm going to do this this men's retreat. Do you want to go?" Nice. And without hesitation, I was just like, "Yes." And I was like, "Shit, what did I just commit to?" I had no clue what I was in for. And I had like all kinds of judgment, about like the people I was going to be around. All these guys doing yoga, wearing linen pants. And like, I was like, "Dude, I don't know if I'm going to fit in." I was like super nervous. And so I told Shems this. I was like, "Man, I had like an exit strategy to get out of there, because like I didn't know what I was going to like meet when I got there. And so I had people like all set up to get me out of this like middle of nowhere town, like in case I needed to like get out of Dodge." Right. And, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, dude, because that's ballsy to even say that. And I was like, "Well, like, I'm just being real with you." But the minute I showed up, I was met with such welcoming love from all these dudes, where I was like, "Man, this is legit." And I had never felt that before. I had never felt that true, like, authentic connection with people where nobody was judging me. They didn't give a shit about my tattoos. They didn't care about my attitude. They didn't care about like what my backstory is or whatever. It was just all love. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And for the first time, that experience was the first time, and probably my whole life, man, where I felt what it felt to feel again. I had forgotten, dude, what that even felt like.
Sure.
Like the whole time I was up here, just thinking and analyzing and just going through life with grit and willpower and strength, but never really feeling anything. Like I was like numb to the world, numb to everything around me. And dude, I got cracked open on that first men's retreat big time.
Yeah.
And it was gnarly. Like I had never, I cried like for like 3 weeks straight, even after. And it wasn't like I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, it wasn't like a sadness. I wasn't sad. It was that I was feeling things I hadn't felt before. Like I would listen to a song and I would feel like all the words and all the music, and it would just like move me to tears. And I was like, dude, this is intense, man. Like what's happening to me? But like I tell you, man, it was definitely the greatest joy of my life, like finding that circle and finding that work, man. So I'm sure for you, why don't you go into that a little bit? Like how has men's work like touched your life in what ways?
Yeah, well, first of all, I could just say I've experienced exactly what you've described on both sides, right? I've been that guy stepping in, feeling like, dude, what the hell did I get myself into? And obviously, once you drink the Kool-Aid, you're on the other side saying, dude, get in here, man. The water's warm. Let's go.
Yeah.
And to be able, especially now, because I've been doing this for a while, just being able to witness guys, and you can see it too when guys show up. You can feel the discomfort because it's relatable. You remember what that feels like. One of the first experiences for me was going to the Sterling Men's Weekend. Have you heard of Justin Sterling and his work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody actually recommended that I go to him, and I looked it up. Like, I mean, I shouldn't have done that, but I looked it up, and I was like, no, it's not for me. Yeah. And so I didn't go. But go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's all right. I mean, and truthfully, it's nearly not for everybody, and I'm not fully on board with their ways of doing everything. But one of the things that was really powerful was they have an exercise. It's around grief. I won't sell any of it out, but
right.
I remember when they started to introduce what we were doing, I started to feel my body just start to like rumble. It was like I was having like an internal earthquake, and I just felt my body start to shake. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And, before I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I was feeling into it. And before I know it, the lights are out. And then next thing I know, like almost in a flash, I'm on the floor crying my eyes out, and I've got like 4 guys holding me. And, it's one of those moments where you become conscious of yourself. The feeling carried me away for a while. And then all of a sudden I got zapped back into my body. Like, where the fuck am I? What's going on? Why are people touching me? Am I okay? And then realizing that like, that was my ego trying to protect me again. And then once I went past that and just allowed myself to be supported, there was such a release. And this whole thing went on for, I think it was like maybe an hour. It's kind of hard to tell. I remember at one point I looked up and I was like, I really feel like I'm in a mental institution because there's tears, there's guys throwing punch. It was crazy. Yeah. And then all of a sudden the lights come on and I see dudes with, tattoos all over their face and down their body, piercings everywhere, crying in an embrace with like a 60-year-old white dude, like corporate looking type of guy, like in tears, hugging each other. And that was the moment I said, wow, none of us are unique. None of us are unique. Maybe we got different details in our story. When you ask that question, what's your backstory? I'm sure you get a different answer from everybody. But when you read between the lines, there's pain, there's joy, there's sadness and grief, there's triumph, there's challenge all over everybody's life experience. And so when I realized that and really accepted it, and then I was able to recognize that there's certain spaces I can step into where it's safe. We've got an agreement around confidentiality. We're agreeing not to judge each other. We've got certain other agreements that keep us all in check. Then there's no reason for me not to go down to the core. Because in that room on that weekend, I went down to the cellar, man. Like I remember reflecting on it later. I was like, wow, it was damp and wet and dank down there. Like the dark stuff that I've been holding down since I was a teenager, that I just found that valve, stuffed it in and tucked it all away. And at this point, there's no reason for me not to go there. And it's like that, like I said, that invitation to say, hey, let's go. It's warm in here. There's so much possibility on the other side of all that energy you're putting into holding your emotions back. Let's go. We don't have to lead an emotional life and let our emotions run the show, but let's experience them and then learn from them and keep moving.
Yeah, it's a trip, man. I think ever since I started doing that work, I've really my circle has changed. Where not really so much like I'm still friends with the same people I was friends with before, but there's a difference in like my connection with that. Because it's like I can sense immediately if someone's like going to be real with me or if they're just like putting the front up or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And the minute I sense that, it's like, all right, well, I'm not going to really put my front up. I'm just going to be who I am, and it is what it is. But I'm not going to invest too much time and energy into that person because it's like I know you're not giving me your real self, and when you're ready, you will. And that's all good, So I'll live by example, hopefully, and be more inviting for people to do that work, because it's beneficial,
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people that even my wife has asked me to like, oh yeah, you should hang out with so and so, and it's like, nah, I'm good. Like, well, like, what's the deal? I was like, well, I've tried to like talk to them or whatever, and it just doesn't. We're not on the same like wavelength. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things that I'm doing in my life, and it's not a judgment in any way, but like for me, like I decided to stop drinking. It's like, so obviously you immediately like kind of like cut off like connections with the people that want to be in that life.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging those people. It's like, hey, you want to drink? That's cool. I just don't have time for it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't do my body any good, like my mind any good. And like, I just don't want it for me, I'm not hating on it. If you want to go to the bar and if that's where you feel that's the only place I can connect with you, I'm more than happy to go with you. I'll drink water, whatever. But hopefully we can find somewhere else to kick it.
I feel you, man.
You just find that you just don't have time for those kinds of that energy anymore. It's not worth it anymore. But.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I remember I had friends that I grew up with that I went through all of those times with, right? I mean, guys that literally I've known since I was 5 years old. And I remember when I started to go on that journey and diving into the work and being more open and expressing myself. And I went back to visit these guys. They were very interested. They didn't judge me for it, and they were cool with me, like whatever decisions I wanted to make in my life. I was fortunate because it didn't put up a barrier in between us. It made them more curious. Right. They weren't like, let me go do what you did, and I've given a couple of invitations and they pushed back on it, say, oh no, I'm not really ready or not really into it or whatever reason. Yeah. But I was fortunate because I was always met with curiosity. And I think there's a lot of people when you start to live your life according to what feels good for you, like you said, immediately some people are just going to cut you out because all of a sudden you become a mirror for them saying, wow, if he could do it, why am I still going to the bar every Friday and getting wasted? Why am I doing that? And they don't want to see that. They'd rather turn away from it and focus elsewhere.
Right. I think for me is like, it was an understanding and a realization that like alcohol for me was just a mask. I was just hiding, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to deal with certain issues, so I'll just drink. I'd be like, I'll just drink. And that gives me the ability to not be socially anxious. I can be lubricated and kind of mix it up with whoever. And it's like, but I wasn't really addressing like, why am I anxious? Like what's going on with me internally? Like what trauma is coming to the surface for me that this is like, feels unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And like I had a therapist ask me one time, like, where do I feel the safest? And this was years ago. And I was like, on a military base with all of my military brothers. That's where I feel the safest. And he was like, interesting. Like, why do you think that is? And I didn't really know at the time. I was like, I don't know. I don't know, a bunch of badasses, a bunch of alpha males like hanging out. And like, yeah, I don't know. I just feel safe. But at the core of that for me it was the one time in my life where I could let my guard down. I could let my guard completely down and know that I had people around me to watch my back and take care of me, because I felt like my whole life was so chaotic. Like as a young child, like all these bad things were happening to me and all around me. And I had no control over my own environment. I was a child, so I had no control over it. And so as I got older, I was like, I'm going to do everything in my power to control my environments. Like I'm going to make sure that they are in my control as much as I could. And the way that I usually did that was through aggression, through strength, through different ways or whatever. And but I always felt like, man, I just want to chill. I just want to put my guard down, man. I want to be able to like just relax and not feel like I'm being attacked by people or someone who's coming out or around that corner. And being around those brothers was like a way for me, and sisters, was a way for me to, just be able to let my guard down and know that I was being taken care of. And that was what was at the core of it. So finding that men's work for me was kind of that same thing. We did an exercise with Shems where he had us like put on a blindfold. And he's like, yeah, we're going to walk around the woods up here, like, and you're going to be blindfolded and you're going to be led by another brother here. And you're just going to have to trust that he's leading you in the right direction. And you can't see anything, So he would ring a bell and you'd walk, blindfolded. And the only thing that the first part of the exercise, he's like, the person's like guiding you, like moving your shoulders and whatever. And then he rings a bell. And then he takes his hands off you. And the only way he's guiding you is by touching you in different spots to kind of like, so you intuitively know which way to go and which way not to go. And then the last part of the exercise was to put earplugs in too, so you can't hear or see. And, and when we were done with that exercise, it sounds silly to a lot of people probably listening, but like I was in tears when it was over.
Right.
And I was like, man, like, why is that choking me up so much? And I was like, oh, I get it. Like, I've never trusted another man like that, like ever. I've never put my guard down enough to like trust. And he asked us to pick somebody in the group that we trusted the least. And I was like, this is kind of awkward. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like I don't want to call anybody out, but like, honestly, I picked the complete opposite of what I viewed myself as. It was the youngest dude in the group, the most softest, kindest, gentlest dude in the entire group. And it wasn't a knock on him or whatever. I think I saw a lot in him that I wish I had, And so I picked him. And it was amazing, dude. It was such an amazing experience to trust another dude like that, It's a trip.
Yeah. So there's actually something I was curious about, because you said that you felt the safest on a military base. You said you could let your guard down. So when you say you felt like you could let your guard down with those fellas, do you mean in the same way that you do in the men's work where you're, sharing?
No.
You just mean like you don't have to watch your back, like no one's going to attack you.
The physicality of things, like where like I felt like at the core, like when I answered that question years ago about being on the military base, it was definitely from a physical standpoint. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have to be an alpha. I didn't have to be like the guy that's protecting my friends. I didn't have to. I could literally go to a bar and get shithouse drunk and know that people are going to take me home. I don't have to worry about someone stealing my wallet and taking my shit and like. So it's definitely from a physical aspect. And then when I dove into the men's work, it was the complete like diving down with the emotions where I could really be who I am, like behind all the bullshit, like facade, macho, machismo bullshit. Like I didn't have to be that dude. You know what I mean? I honor the person that I am as far as like an aggressive guy. I like to be intense and whatever. And I honor that in me, but that's not always the real me. You know what I mean? There's a softness behind all that. There's a super sensitive dude underneath a lot of the facade that I meet the world with. And with the men's work, it's been awesome to be able to drop some of that, and that's where I felt true safety. You know what I mean? Like, true safety.
Well, and the part that really gets to me is that how many men have had to wait until they're 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. I've been in workshops with guys in their 60s and 70s who are doing this for the first time.
Yeah, man.
Who just completely unravel into tears and say, I can't believe I've gone my whole life without opening myself up to other men in this way. Yeah. It's the part of me, it's the part that wakes me up and drives me to do this work, because I don't want my son to have to live and go through the hardest years of his life without having that kind of support. Yeah. Because what would happen if every boy, every man had a circle like that from a young age, surrounded by uncles, surrounded by other boys who were a little farther ahead than he was, watching them encounter challenges and learning from their mistakes. I mean, that's the piece that we're missing. That's why 9 out of 10 people who commit suicide are men. That's why we're leading in every single category. I mean, homelessness, mental issues, mental health issues, every category that doesn't involve breasts and ovaries, men are leading in.
Right.
And I gotta believe that it's because we've got this machismo, do it all yourself, lone wolf, keep stuffing those emotions down type of mentality. And it's killing us, man.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other thing too is like, I think that with men's work, and just in my opinion, it's a perishable skill as well. I mean, I think it's one of those things that like you have to keep doing you have to like find a group that like you can really relate with and kind of intermingle with and use as a support group and stuff like that, because I think we're all like wired as men to kind of go back into our caves. You know, we're all wired to kind of just go back and be like, nah, I don't want to get too close. Nah, I'm not going to, I don't want to, you know, keep that connection going because, you know, I got this, that, or the other thing.
Right.
And you fall back into old habits. You fall back into old ways of thinking and old ways of being. And I've been guilty of that for sure. You know, I was doing the men's work a lot, man. I went to like 2 seminars with Shems. I was working with him one-on-one and like, I was loving it. But then you get back into the hustle and bustle of life, and it very quickly fades away once you start getting the pressures of like just life coming at you. So that's a good question I want to ask you, man. How have you balanced like being who you are today and doing the men's work and leading men's work? How do you balance that with like being a productive member of society or a provider for your family? Because that's been like the hardest like question for me to answer, to find that balance, you know?
Yeah, man. Well, to be honest with you, I'm still searching for that answer. I mean, I've made progress over the years, and probably the biggest, most recent leap for me was making this my full-time work. You know, it's the way that I provide for my family. It's the way that I go out and make sure that we have what we need, is by being a leader in this field. So I get to be in conversations like this with men all day long. Bringing guys out into the wilderness to lead them on rites of passage and initiatory experiences, and leading virtual circles, teaching other men how to lead, how to facilitate men's circles, so that we can spread this work that we're talking about here.
For sure.
That's really the only way I've been able to make it work. You know, previous to that, when I was still working like my Clark Kent job is what I used to call it, you know, the only way I did it was I was working like 3-4 jobs and working, you know, probably like 80 to 100 hours a week. If I really calculated all the hours, you know, it was just, I would work all day, spend a little bit of time with the family. When everyone went to bed, I would keep working until 2-3 in the morning, wake up at 6. And I did that for a couple of years, man, and really destroyed myself, you know, like physically, health wise. Like I was, you know, not in optimal health, but I felt like it's what I needed to do to push through to the other side. But yeah, there's definitely were consequences of that. I'm glad that I did it on the other side of things, because I get to do this all the time and help more men out. But yeah, I'm still figuring out that balance. I'm still figuring it out. And I've lived in Santa Cruz for 3 months now, and it's the first time that I've been away from that men's team that I was mentioning before, those guys I was with for 8 years. Yeah. And dude, it's exactly what you said. As soon as you step away from that, and they were telling me from the beginning, they're like, someday you won't have the men's team and you'll have to figure it out. And just in these 3 months, man, it's been so much more tempting to settle into my environment and the people that I'm surrounded by. And if I'm not staying on my edge and being in contact with other guys that are pushing that edge of comfort all the time, then we call it the call of the couch. That voice in your head that's like, oh, come on, man, you've been working so hard. Just kick back for a little bit. Take it easy. Just relax. Crack open a cold one. You know, that voice that is telling us to just chill. Don't push so hard.
Right. Yeah, it's been a trip, man. I've always I've wanted to honor like people that, when I started doing the men's work, there was a lot of dudes that I saw there that didn't, I don't know, I'm gonna try to word this correctly so I don't I'm not trying to bash anybody, but there was a lot of guys that were struggling financially, struggling like to have like the professional like success that they had in their spiritual life. You know, there wasn't a lot of correlation between the two. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, like there's other people that I've seen that like their families support them so they can go out and find themselves in the woods as much as they want. You know what I mean? Like they can, you know, do a bunch of ayahuasca circles or whatever it takes to like really meet that sense of enlightenment or get some answers that they're seeking. But it's like, they're not worried about paying the mortgage. They're not worried about like paying like bills and paying like for their children and this and that, because like they're supported by their families. And I think that's awesome. If their families are that way where they can support them to find themselves, cool. But like for me, it's like I want to find a way to like help the knuckleheads of the world. You know what I mean? Help the dudes that really need this work, but also have to be providers for their families. You know what I mean? Like where you find that balance where it's like, because it's fucking hard, dude. Like super hard. Like especially Like for a guy like me, like I was doing the men's work and I was just like loving my life, dude. Like everything was perfect. Like it was all awesome. And then I go back to corporate and it's like, ugh, like it's just like it's like an energy suck, dude. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not passionate about this shit at all. Like I'm doing this for a paycheck. And I guess like I'm providing for my family, so it's all good. But this is definitely not what I'm meant to do. So it's like trying to find like, how do you make money at doing what your passion is, doing what your purpose is? And I think that's where a lot of men struggle. They get stuck in the rat race. You're stuck in the rat race because you got to provide, but it's not what you're meant to do.
Well, I think you have to look at it as a means to an end. If you have a larger, more compelling vision that you can fit your corporate job or your Clark Kent job into, then it can make sense. Because I was in the same position as you, man. I was working for a corporation. I was a contracted physical therapist, and I hated it, man. I was staying up till 2, 3 in the morning writing notes on a laptop, like frying my eyeballs out on a shitty laptop screen. And I was like, why am I doing this? And over the course of a couple of years, the why am I doing this became, I don't want to do this anymore. And then eventually it was, at one point it was like, I'm done. And my wife was like, yeah, you got to be done, because this is not working for anybody around here for you to be this way. And I was like, yeah, we got to get out of here. And in the last phase of transitioning out of physical therapy and the corporate stuff I was doing and fully into all the men's work and Rising Man that I do now,
yeah.
I had to give myself some context and tell myself, why am I getting out of the house? Why am I waking up and leaving my family to go treat people all day, doing stuff I don't love? And it fit into this idea I had of what it was going to and allow me to do. I was like, well, this allows me to put food on the table while I'm building my business and my platform on the side. It enables me to do this other part. And because I've checked out different possibilities, this seems like the best way for me to do it right now. So that's what I'm going to do. And so I remember one day, I remember my son was still in diapers, and I remember like I changed his diaper before I went to work. And then the first patient I saw was some 90-year-old man, and I had to change his diaper. And I remember I was in a men's circle. I left him a message. I was like, yo, I just changed 2 diapers in the past 60 minutes. One was a 2-year-old. The other was a 90-year-old. I'm done with this shit. And from then on, I called it my wipe and ass job. I was like, I'm just here to wipe ass, check in, check out, do what I got to do so that I can get back to the thing that matters to me. And it worked for a while. It wasn't easy. I still had that same sense that you had, where I was like, man, I'm done. I really don't want to be doing this. I'm not passionate about it, but it's allowing me to do what I need to do. It's helping me get to that next step. And the day that I went in and did I handed in my papers, signed off, got my last check, was the best feeling in the world. It made it all worth it.
For sure. I mean, I think that's where a lot of us also struggle, is like not having the vision of what it is you really want. I don't think a lot of people really sit down and ask themselves, like, what do I want? Like, What do I want? Like, what am I passionate about? What do I feel like my purpose in life is? Mm-hmm. And I don't think people like give that question much thought. It's kind of like, I go to college, I get a job, I raise a family, blah, 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 and then I die. And that's it, Yeah. And for me, like, I was always struggling with that, because I would be at work and I'm like, people be freaking out about the dumbest shit. And I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, like, none of this really matters. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I was in the elevator business, and like, I would have people like literally calling me, like cussing me out, freaking out on me over like one of the elevators being out of service. And I was like, you have like 7 elevators in the building. Do you really feel like it's necessary to call me and cuss me out because like one of your elevators is down? Like, wow. And so it's hard to really like, like separate, like, where it's like, dude, like, I really don't give a shit about any of this. Like, I'm just doing it just for the paycheck. So I was trying that approach where I was like, dude, I make really good money and it's cool. It gives me the life that I enjoy. It's all great. But how do I get the hell out of here? And while I was asking those questions, I ended up having my 6th back surgery. So I was kind of forced out. You know what I mean? Right. It was like, now you're on disability, And when I did they made me apply for Social Security disability. And I was like, at my age, I'm 38 years old. There's no way they're approving this. And even the attorney they hired for me was like, there's no way they're going to approve it. You're too young. Dude, we went to the Social Security hearing and they approved it. And dude, I was like, it like shook me at my core. And I was like, what? Like they did what? And I was scared, dude, to be honest with you, man. I was like, dude, like I'm so young, and like I told you, like my mind is not disabled at all. I was like, do I just accept this and just go with it? I don't know. And so I think it's been like the universe's way or God's way, whatever you want to call it, of like kind of forcing me to find the answers. You know what I mean? Like giving me I call it an opportunity. Not a lot of people in my position, not a lot of people have that opportunity. It's a great opportunity to have where it's like I have a paycheck coming in where I'm not forced to go to like corporate. You know what I mean? So I have a lot of time on my hands to read and think and write and do the things that I want to do. So hopefully I don't waste this opportunity.
Right. Well, that's that. I mean, that's what a lot of people do, right? Is they cash that check and then they just kick back and watch some Netflix. And,
yeah, for sure.
You know, again, it's that ability, that internal drive to do something more that everybody's capable of, but not everybody chooses. It's not a guarantee that the spirit is going to rise within you and you will persevere and carry yourself upward. I think that was the biggest myth that I had, was that somehow things are just going to happen. Something is going to compel me forward. And no doubt, there's definitely forces outside of myself that have shaped me and guided me along the way. I definitely don't take responsibility for all of the way things have played out in my life. Yeah. But there's definitely moments where I remember sitting down and saying, okay, something's going to happen. If I just wait around long enough, something's going to happen. And days go by and it's like, nope, not yet. Nope. No. I'm waiting. Nope, not happening. Yeah. And I think a lot of people are waiting around for that, because it's that whole thing where for a lot of people, it's more painful to do something different than it is to keep stewing in the same thing over and over again. Yeah. And only when the pain of staying the same is greater than the discomfort of doing something different is when you actually will do it, right? It's the path of least resistance. And I think that's why people have to hit rock bottom. That's why people have that, they almost overdose or they have a suicide attempt or something, because they've got to go to that extreme to say, hey, all right, that was crazy. I definitely don't want to go there anymore. What other options do I have?
Yep. It's crazy. I'm hoping that I could be like the beacon of hope and like what's possible, like, and to that point where you're talking about with people like getting to rock bottom, I used to see all these people around me and I was like judging them, like, dude, like, look at these people, like smoking all these cigarettes and shit like that. What are they doing? Are they like waiting to have a heart attack and then they'll quit smoking? Like when they have the heart attack, it's like, is that what it's going to take? Like just make some fucking changes. And realizing recently that all those judgments were just a huge projection. It was a huge projection for me, like being like, I was seeing in them my own weakness and my own inability to make the changes that I needed to be making.
Totally.
And in terms of like my physicality and my fitness, dude, I had let it go to shit. Like I was just like, dude, like I'm just sitting around. I'm, stressed out about this coronavirus shit. Like I don't know what's going to happen with society. And I'm kind of like wigging out about it a little bit. And I wasn't doing well mentally or physically at all. And, when you're not mentally well and you're not in the right emotional state, you tend to eat like emotionally. I'm just going to do this emotional eating. I'm going to like cure this anxiety with like food, with ice cream and whatever else, to make yourself feel good. Fake endorphins or whatever. I don't know, serotonin. But
salt and vinegar chips for me.
Yeah, dude. So like I went gnarly with it and put on a bunch of weight. And then finally just one day I woke up and was like, you know what, man, like enough's enough. I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to become obsessed with like being better tomorrow than I am today. In one way, shape, or form, whether it be reading another book or reading a couple more chapters than I did the day before, whether it be pushing myself a little bit further physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is. And I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait around. Like you said, like I was guilty of doing the same thing where I was like waiting for something to happen. Like, oh, something will pop up. But with the podcast, it was like, even with that, it's like, I was hoping that I can monetize it a little bit better and like do things or whatever. And it's like, but I'm taking the steps I wasn't really taking the steps to get there. I was kind of like just doing the podcast and I was having fun. I was meeting a lot of great people and this and that. But I was like, I always felt like kind of like a sucker for trying to like monetize things. Like I didn't feel like I was worth the money. Like I'm not worth that. You know what I mean? Like why am I going to try and get people to pay like to listen to my stuff?
Sure. And
so it's been a change of mindset, like changing like kind of like my hustle, I guess, if you will. And we're all in this world to like make a living, you know what I mean? And like, I don't know, and do something productive and that contributes to society. And like, if I feel like what I'm putting out is contributing, then I should be monetized for that, you know? There's nothing wrong with
Yeah.
it.
It makes me think of one of the things I got from my men's team. We always used to say, the second most powerful force in the universe is a man's ability to believe his own bullshit. And it's all those things that we tell ourselves that
Right.
make it so that we don't do the hard thing.
Right.
The harder thing would be to venture into something you didn't know how to do. And I've had that same edge for myself before too. What I heard you just say about monetizing your work, your hard-earned work, man. I mean, it's work to put on these podcasts. It's work to go out and enroll people to be guests on the show and to show up for this after you put your kids down. I know, man, I've been there. And that whole story of, well, but I don't want to ask people to support me. It's, that's not the right thing to do. I don't want people to think I'm taking advantage of them. It was just a clever story that was making it so that I didn't have to do the more uncomfortable thing, put myself out there and actually seeing that people want to support me.
Right.
People want to support you and the work that you're doing because you're impacting people out there that you don't even know. Same for me, man. I'm sure you get the same thing. I guess I get messages from people all the time.
Yeah.
Dude, I've been listening to the podcast for 6 months. Oh my God. I just found out about your podcast a week ago and I've listened to 50 episodes in the past week. And I'm like, damn, really? Are you a real person? This is for real. Like it still catches me off guard. And now I meet people and they're starting to recognize my name. They're like, oh my God, you're Jeddy Azuma with the rising man. Right. And I'm like, chill, man. I'm just another dude. But it's that same idea of, well, it's a lot easier and safer for me to just be over here in a small little box doing what I do where I'm comfortable. And we didn't sign up to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of it's been a work in progress for me because I've been, I don't want to be, I've always been that guy. Like, I don't want to be too big for my britches kind of thing. That's been the story that I've told myself. I don't want to believe my own hype. Like there's been so many people that I've interviewed that'd be like, man, you're a great interviewer. You do really good at this podcasting game. Like you're good at this shit. And I don't really believe it. I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm okay. Like whatever, and I kind of like brush it off. And, I think lately it's been more like, finding my voice, and finding my power and being like, nah, like I'm capable of doing a lot more than I've been doing. And just to make those moves, man, to like kind of make better connections and network with more people and do bigger things. Because to be honest with you, man, when I first started, this whole thing was like an ego project. It came from the heart for sure. Like the intention behind my podcast was definitely a heartfelt message. But a lot of it was fueled by my ego. I put myself in a huge financial hole doing the podcast. It's like I was traveling all over the United States, like interviewing people in person. And although like that was amazing and it was great to meet all of those people and establish awesome connections, I put my money where my mouth was. And like, that's how I got in the door with a lot of people. Like, wow, you're going to fly to me. You're going to fly to New York. You're going to fly to Jersey, Philadelphia, wherever, all the places I've been. I'm like, yeah, I'll fly to you, man. We'll do the interview. Let's do it. And, but looking back on that, hindsight being 2020, is a lot of that was fueled by my ego. It was like, it was kind of cool for people to see me flying all over the place. It's kind of cool to like, like, oh, wow, look at, where's Josh at this week? He's all over the place, and I was getting messages about it, blah, 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 blah. And, when you break it all down, it's like, man, like I didn't need that. You know what I mean? I could have done it the way we're doing it right now. You know what I mean? But like, because of like kind of where I was in my life at that time, I put myself in a huge financial hole. I mean, like 50 grand plus, all the plane tickets and rental cars and like,
totally, yeah,
hotels and shit. So now it's like, well, what do I do now? And I guess for me, it's just honoring where I am. I mean, I don't need to put on a show for anybody. Just honor who I am, where I am, and that's it.
Well, yeah, and like you said, man, there's definitely the ego part of it, which is definitely honorable to be able to own up to that and share that, because I think a lot of people wouldn't. And there's the genuine part of what you wanted to do, the part that was compelling. I always think of it this way. In my life, I'm driving the bus, and there's a lot of different voices and characters on my bus, and one of them is my ego. And a lot of times that ego tries to jump up and grab the steering wheel and wants to be seen driving the bus and wants to be like waving at the people and, honking the horn and letting people on. And I got to keep that part of my character, my persona in check, because it's doing its job. It's a part of me. I think when I was in my mid-20s, I was trying to destroy my ego. I was trying to be the egoless man. And I realized that was me believing the second, most powerful force in the universe over there. Yeah. I even had a girlfriend one time I remember when I was 23 years old. she was younger than me. She was like 21. And she was like, you have such a big ego. And I remember it like hit me like a gust of wind, like, oh, what?
How dare you?
Me? The ego?
Yeah.
The humble guy? You're telling me I've got a big ego? But she was right. And she nailed me. I just didn't want to admit it, man, because the ego really is just that part of us that wants to survive, wants to belong, you know? And so I just always think of it as like my ego is always in play. It's whether I'm letting them drive the bus or not. And that's a discipline, man. Because
that's a great point, dude. Because I feel like you're right. Like the intention behind everything I was doing was pure. You know what I mean? Like I did like, I put a lot of like good stuff out there in the world, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm super grateful and thankful that it all took place, and I would never change it. But I think where my head was at was like, you know, like, dude, I'm putting myself in this hole, like in the hopes, I don't know, like maybe someone will notice me, maybe like whatever. And it's like, I don't need all that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, and it's been like, I've been like dissecting that even in terms of like where I live, you know, it's like, do I need like a big house? Do I need like plantation shutters and all that? Like for what? Like people can come over here to like see my house. Like I hope they're coming to see me, not my house. Like I don't care about this shit. It's really been kind of like tearing a lot of that away. So we're in the process of potentially moving, and I don't need like a big old house. It doesn't need to be a new house. I don't care what it looks like. I just want it to be comfortable for my kids, comfortable for my wife and I, and to be functional, where I can grow my own food, you know, on my land. I can have some animals and be sustainable, and like that's what I'm shooting for.
That's a vision, man. That's a man who knows what he wants, right? And like you said earlier, I think that's one of the most important questions that guys can ask themselves. Because I know I didn't ask myself that for a long time. Yeah. I thought I was asking myself what I wanted, but when I asked myself that, I was really just hearing other people's voices in my head for a long time, man. For a long time, probably until my mid to late 20s. Even after I got in, quote unquote, the work, I was still listening to other people's voices. And to me, that's when I finally experienced true freedom, was when I was like, you know what? I'm going to listen to myself. What do I want? What do I really want to create? If I stripped all of it down to the bare bones, what do I need? You know, what kind of life do I want to create for myself and for my family? And then build it from there. Because actually, it's not that complicated. It's really not. And I find that most guys, what they really want is simple. It's simpler than what they're actually shooting for. They're like, nah, man, I don't want a big ass house. I just want a simple house where my family can be happy and I can do my podcast and I can be content, you know, grow some food. That's all I really want. It's like, well, that doesn't sound that complicated. What's keeping you back from that?
Yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts on in terms of men's work or just in terms of life? What's your view on the use of psychedelics when it comes to men's work? Like ayahuasca circle, psilocybin, stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I'll just say off the bat, I make a distinction between, you know, what people would call drugs or substances and genuine medicines. You know, I've been sitting with the Native American Church for, I guess, almost 4 years now. And so I've sat in ayahuasca ceremonies once or twice, but mostly I sit in peyote meetings. And so I don't even consider those like in the category of psychedelics, because to me it carries a certain stigma. To me, it's medicine. It's medicine that I choose to sit with. And for me, I've always experienced it as a heart opener. Yeah. So I think that in men's work, I mean, I've never brought peyote into men's work up to this point. You know, I've done things like sweat lodges, other ceremonies with men, but haven't brought the plant medicine into that space yet. Yep. But, you know, things like the psilocybins, and it's all a matter of intention, right? Because all of these things at the end of the day come from the earth. So some people take LSD and psilocybin to trip out, to have an experience, to run away from something, to see a bunch of visuals and forget about the things that they're not facing off with. But these substances, medicines, plants, they have an intelligence in them. They know what to do. So when someone has a bad trip, it's only bad because they weren't willing to see what the medicine wanted to show them. Right. So I think your question was, how do I feel about that being brought into the work? I think it's something that, I mean, having a relationship with plants is important. Whether we're talking about psychedelic plants or just the plants that you put into your body. I think everyone should have a better relationship with plants in general. But if it's being brought into a space to as a facilitator to open the doors a little bit more to help us get a few layers deeper faster, and it's done in a respectful and a responsible way, then heck yeah, man, I'm all for it. I mean, I don't care if we're sprinkling pixie dust on each other, whatever gets us to that depth of vulnerability, if it's done in a responsible and respectful way.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's come up for me too, is like with doing this work, is like it's been calling me for years, you know what I mean? Like to do like sit in an ayahuasca circle or ceremony, and you know, or go to like do like there's like a layer that I haven't reached yet, you know what I mean? Like I haven't been able to go like as deep as I'd like to, and there's been something that's always held me back, and I think it's fear, you know, and I think it's like not having. If I'm in a circle, I want to know the people that I'm with I can completely trust.
Right.
Like I can, that they got me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and that's huge for me. And I've seen a lot of people in my awareness that they go and like do these ceremonies or whatever, and it's like there's, like you said, they're just going to trip out. You know, it's like it's not really, and that's not my intention at all. Like I'm not trying to be fucked up. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to maybe gain some knowledge and wisdom from the plants. That I can bring back into like the physical reality that we're all experiencing, and hopefully share some insights. Mm-hmm. And so I've been looking for that circle, looking for that way to like meet with somebody that I know, like I can let my guard down. I'm cool. I'm safe. We're good. You know? So.
Well, and it's interesting, man. I've sat in a lot of spaces, and when somebody's really fighting it, when someone doesn't feel safe, it shows up. And if you've got a really responsible road man, road woman, medicine man, medicine woman, whoever's facilitating that experience, if they know what they're doing, they will know how to support that, and they'll see it, and they won't even let someone into the space unless they're fully trusting, because it again, like I said, it does show up. That medicine just strips the veil right down, and if you're not ready to present to the people that you're with what you got underneath the surface, you're gonna go down kicking and screaming. And different medicines work with people in different ways. You know, I think a lot of stories that come out about these ayahuasca retreats and ceremonies about people losing their mind and going crazy because I think they're fighting it, and they don't know how to be with that part of themselves that they haven't looked at before.
Yeah.
You know, so a couple of my teachers, they say, yeah, you know, people think that it's just, you know, sitting in a circle and serving up some plant juice. There's way more to it than that, you know. It's way more to it than that. So I always tell people who ask me, because people inevitably say, hey, are you in plant medicine world? We get to talking.
Right.
I always say, just be really conscious of who you're trusting to lead you on that journey. Ask questions, you know, ask them how long they've been doing it for. It's not a sign of disrespect. It's taking care of yourself to make sure that you feel good about who's leading you on that journey.
Yeah. Some of the things that came up for me too, was that there was a lot of people that were doing it that it's almost like a spiritual snobbery. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you haven't done ayahuasca? Oh, yeah. It's like,
how many ceremonies have you sat in?
Right. And it's like I don't like. I mean, come on, dude. Like, I'm not into that. You know what I mean? I'm not into like a spiritual ego or whatever, like spiritual narcissist. Like, it's all good. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to find some different kind of enlightenment with people that I think are cool. You know, that are down like that. In a way of not stroking their ego, but in a way of like helping other people and bringing that medicine back to the circle, and kind of like, I don't know, sharing some insights, I guess. What are you up to now? Like, what are you doing now up in Santa Cruz?
Well, like I said, I just moved up here 3 months ago. We live on 10 acres. We're living community style up here. So there's 12 adults on the property. With my best friend, who I know back from college, him and his wife and their 2 kids, they're like the landlord and landlady of the property. And so they're kind of overseeing this operation. And we've been talking about living together and raising our kids together since we met when we were 17. So, and I'm 33 now. So literally half a lifetime we've been holding this vision. And here we are, you know, raising our kids on the same piece of land and growing food and building structures. So that's like the newest developments. On top of that, moving from Santa Barbara to Santa Cruz, I put down physical therapy work entirely, and I've been fully invested and engaged with everything Rising Man. So the podcast, leading my virtual circles, taking guys out on wilderness fasting retreats and initiations. We're doing another one in October. We do a few of those every year, and all those different ways that I've I've taken a lot of what I've experienced in the past 10 years of sitting in circles and shaped them into experiences to help other men get what they need to be leaders in their lives. So, I mean, that's just my life right now, like raising a family, stewarding land, and serving the men.
That's what's up, dude. Where can people find your podcast?
Everything I'm doing is at risingman.org. And if you're on social media, I'm on Instagram at Jeddy Azuma, at Rising Man Movement, Facebook, same thing. But yeah, it's all living at the website right now.
Have you noticed a lot of support amongst other people that are doing like men's work, or is there a lot of like kind of competition?
It's funny. There's like an underlying level of competition that I think just comes from a level of scarcity, because like you alluded to it before, man, it's not easy to make a living in this world. A lot of people think that being a coach or being a transformational leader, et cetera, that all of a sudden you're making six figures just because you got a website and an Instagram page. But I think the only competition I find is that it comes from people just thinking that there's not enough men out there to serve, and that there's like some sort of battling for territory. But it's very subtle, because I think also guys who are leading in that space recognize, well, we are all in this together. It is all about transforming this generation of men. Yeah. So it's subtle. I don't give much time or energy to the people who are clearly carrying some of that. I've surrounded myself with some really good dudes, and we've all got, there's a lot of men out there, dude, and there's a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different angles to healing, to accessing deeper truth and discovery. So I know that I'm not the guy for everybody, and neither is anybody else.
Yeah, I was talking to one of the guys that I went to one of the men's retreats with, and him and I were definitely like the two lions of the group, and like when we met each other, like we did our eye to eye, I was like, dude, like he saw me, I saw him, like it was pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was brought up for us was that there's always something that somebody brings to like a circle. And like if I was going to run like a men's group or whatever, I want to bring in people from different groups, because it's like, dude, they have different things they're going to bring to the table. Right. It's like, it makes it a more well-rounded like circle, because it's like you have a guy that might be better with like, getting these guys to embrace their emotions. There's another guy over here that embrace like how to work with rage, how to work with anger, like all these different things and different like modalities. It's like, dude, like I want to learn all of it. I want to learn from all kinds of different people. So I think it's like it's a benefit. Like with like I don't know the Sacred Sons, if you're connected with them at all, but like the Sacred Sons have a way of doing their thing. All right, cool. And then you have a way of doing your thing. Well, why don't you guys all link up and then do like a big, huge like men's retreat, dude, for everyone? You know what I mean? Like that'd be awesome. Yeah. Everyone makes money. Everyone has fun.
It's funny you mentioned that, man, because I've actually gone out and facilitated at some of the Sacred Sons events, and they've come out to mine too. Yeah, there are guys like that where we cross over, and I'm always honored to bring whatever I've got. And whenever I'm stepping into someone else's space, I'm clear that I'm not the leader here, but it doesn't mean that I'm still expected to bring whatever I've got. And when I ask people to come in and do this, I expect the same from them, is that, bring what you've got into the space. And that's ultimately what I see, dude. When I was a kid, I always loved X-Men, and all the X-Men, they had their different superpowers, and the way that they would deal with the villains is, they would work together in collaborative teamwork. And that's the way I look at it, man. Like you said, we've all got our gifts and our abilities, and we speak to men. We reach men in different ways. And so when all of our powers combine, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I think that there was like one of the things that I brought this up to Shems at one of the last circles we did, where there was a guy's like showing up late to the circle, and that like pissed me off. It was like a trigger for me, like, big time. And I feel like as men, like it's part of our responsibility to like be punctual with our time, to honor other people's time, and to just be respectful of the container, be respectful of the circle, and your time is just as valuable as mine. You know what I mean? So like if you're late, that means I'm having to be held back by waiting for you to get here. And I hated that shit, like, so I know if I did a circle, that'd be one of the first things that we'd be talking about is accountability. You know what I mean? Like as men, where it's like, no, you're going to honor the circle. And if you can't honor the circle, you're out. You know what I mean? Like I don't have any time for it. And I know with Shem's approach, like he's a masterful teacher. So he's just like, he'll embrace that person, give them some tough love, but it's not like, for me, I'd have been like, you're out, dude. Like you're late twice, dude. Like, see ya. You know what I mean? Like we all have clocks. And And that's what I'm saying. There's so many different people that have different, like, I don't know, like they bring something different to the table that it like would be awesome to see, like a guy like Shems, the Sacred Sons, some of my ex-military guys, you know, like bring some like physicality to the group. You know what I mean? I think it'd be pretty awesome. But I would love to link up with you, man, and do do some men's work with you.
Heck yeah.
You said you're doing one in October?
Yeah. We're bringing so we do 4-day wilderness fasts. We do vision fasts. So we take guys out there, no food, in solitude for 4 days. So it's a really powerful experience. For most of us, we haven't had an initiation from boyhood into manhood in our lives. So we treat it like a ceremony that no matter where you are in your life, you're able to mark that passage across that threshold. So yeah, we got a full group of guys coming out in October, but we do them 2-3 times a year. Okay. So yeah, man, anybody else who's interested in something like that, definitely hit me up, get some more info.
Where do people sign up?
You can see, so it's called Compass. It's at risingman.org. Just go look at the Compass tab. I think it's under initiations. Okay. You can read a little bit more about it and then sign up to have a call with me. Make sure it's the right thing for you.
All right, cool, man. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on this podcast. I'm so glad we were able to do this finally. Yeah. You know, it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, man. I enjoyed it too.
Super stoked to see what's next for you, man. And hopefully I can get up there and do one of these retreats with you.
For sure, man. Yeah, we're not going anywhere. We're here. So whenever time is right, man, we got you.
All right, brother. Looking forward to it.
Likewise.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.